Have you ever seen a piece of tech art from the 2000s that felt dark, moody, and futuristic? Something that looked so far ahead of today's technology to the point where it had evolved into an abstract state? This was called the Dark Aero aesthetic, a moody design style all about futurism, sleekness, and luxury. Today we're breaking it down, what it is, where it showed up, its connections to other 2000s aesthetics, and why it still feels like the future. Dark Aero, also known as Frutiger Dark, Frutiger Gothic, and Frutiger Ego, was a 2000s design aesthetic built on sleek black graphics. Dark in Dark Aero's name refers to its heavy use of black, and Aero in its name refers to Microsoft's design language that used the aesthetic in their more expensive products. Dark Aero was ultimately an aesthetic of luxury, quality, and sophistication, hence its use in advertising and user interface branding. Dark Aero was able to convey this feeling of luxury through its most common elements: black piano gloss, skeuomorphism, glossy and graphite textures, aero glass, neon highlights, and auroras. Cities at night were a common element in Dark Aero advertising, alongside the cubes shown earlier. These glossy black cubes show up so frequently in Dark Aero art that I think they deserve a name: Cubes of Gloss. Okay, that was super cringe, sorry. Let me know in the comments if you have a better name. While black was Dark Aero's primary color, green went well with the aesthetic as well. The original Xbox is a prime example of green in Dark Aero, however the line is blurred between Y2K futurism and Frutiger Aero era graphics. Alright, now that you understand Dark Aero, let's take a look at some of Dark Aero's most prominent examples. Starting off in advertising, Blackberry used Dark Aero more than anyone. Their advertisements for the Blackberry 9700 were especially Dark Aero, as can be observed by its use of glossy black surfaces and its emphasis on a premium experience. Also, notice the city on screen here. The Blackberry Empathy concept phone was also advertised with Dark Aero. So was the Blackberry Classic. Blackberry leaned into the Dark Aero aesthetic so heavily as to try to convey a sense of premium experience. This Pontiac G8 advertisement from 2008 is another prime example of Dark Aero, as well as this 5 gum ad. Moving on to software, the most iconic example of all time is Windows Vista Ultimate, released in 2006. Windows Vista Ultimate was the most expensive and most advanced edition of Microsoft's new operating system, and used the Dark Aero aesthetic fittingly. While Windows Vista is one of Microsoft's most hated operating systems, I think this is a beautiful user interface in terms of graphic detail and aesthetic value. Windows Longhorn, an unreleased operating system, also had the Dark Aero aesthetic in certain builds. Looked so futuristic. In everyone's favorite operating system, Windows XP, the Alienware theme was dark, glossy, and futuristic. It also prominently featured blue in its color scheme, which is interesting. You don't get much blue in Dark Aero. For the OGs watching this video, you might remember this theme being featured in this channel's first video. And finally, an example that isn't an operating system, this Blackberry configuration software for Windows XP. Before we move on to the next prominent examples, I just want to quickly show you guys my Frutiger Aero store. So as you can see, we've got Frutiger Aero pillows, Frutiger Aero posters, Frutiger Aero stickers, and a bunch of other different kinds of products. Use code RLC for a 10% discount, link in the description. Now let's move on to media. In movies, the neon scene in Cars is considered Dark Aero because of its high contrast colors and futuristic cars. In Tron Legacy, the Flynn vs. Rensselaer scene is especially Dark Aero. Look how dark, glossy, and futuristic it is. Unlike the Dorfic aesthetic, which I covered in this video, the Dark Aero aesthetic never really had a strong presence in movies or film. When it comes to video games, Angry Birds Space is a popular example within the Dark Aero community thanks to its futuristic themes and heavy use of the color black. These game covers are also good examples of Dark Aero. I couldn't really find that many examples of Dark Aero in video games, so feel free to let me know in the comments below if you know any. Now, time for a controversial example, the original Xbox. I've seen this console be featured in tons of Dark Aero art. Its dark and futuristic color scheme may make it seem like a natural fit into Dark Aero, however, I think not. This console was released in 2001, which is 3 years before Frutiger Aero and its sub-aesthetics, Dark Aero included, became popular in mainstream design. For those of you not familiar with the differences between Y2K and Frutiger Aero futurism, basically all you need to know is that Y2K aesthetics often emphasized more abstract and alien views of the future, while Frutiger Aero and its aesthetics had cleaner and more optimistic views of the future. With that in mind, the original Xbox is clearly a better example of Y2K futurism than Frutiger futurism. I'm not saying that the original Xbox can't be associated with the Dark Aero aesthetic. I'm just saying that if you want to be lore accurate, these two things don't go together. The final and perhaps most significant mainstream use of the Dark Aero aesthetic was in 2015 for Windows 10's Hero wallpaper. After that, the Dark Aero aesthetic ultimately fell out of fashion as more minimalist aesthetics such as corporate Memphis became popular. Frutiger Aero and its sub-aesthetics had a resurgence in popularity in 2022. r/AeroGothic was founded on January 1st of 2023 and is a treasure trove of Dark Aero findings and retrospective art. You can even find some of my 2024 videos reposted here. Alright, that's all for this video. Link in the description to our Community 2000s Tech and Discord server, as well as my Pinterest profile where you can find nearly all the images I use in my videos, as well as images I'm collecting for future videos. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay nostalgic.